We now would move to the council reports. And I noticed that the agenda calls for me to go first. And ordinarily, that's not the sequence we follow, but I will follow that. I have two issues to raise with the council. I have circulated a memo to the council to this effect. It's in the packet. One is that we would like to go to Orlando, the city manager and the airport manager and I, and we had agreed to ask that Mr. Marble, or if he wasn't available, Mr. McKean would go with us. It turns out Mr. Marble is willing, assuming we schedule it at a time when he and the others can do that. What would be done is we would take the concept plan that excuse me, has been developed and just share that with the folks in Orlando as we did at the FAA headquarters in New York, in Washington rather. We mentioned at that time that we had a couple of layout plans that had been developed by citizens. We're very grateful for them. They differ in some detail, but they have the area that was the key area in common, which is that we were trying to avoid having a runway protection zone that encroached on Gulf shores. The only difference between the two plans is one plan contains the other RPZs on the airport property. The other one would allow them to extend in keeping with new FAA regulations, and the officials in Washington understood that, and they would conceivably understand it again. It is in our intent to share this with FAA primarily to get their guidance. And that's very important. We're not really there to argue a case with them or to persuade them in this sense, because the relationship between the city and the FAA is a sensitive one. There's been some reference today to earlier separations. I think the city manager has done a good job in helping establish with the FAA that we do not have an adversarial relationship with them. We don't want to have an adversarial relationship with them. So at the same time, we'd like to solve this problem. And I think there's been an expression of support on the part of a number of council members that they're concerned about the RPZ extending into the Gulf Shores area, because that puts the residents in that area who bought houses when it was not an RPZ into the position of perhaps having some limited value to their property, as well as opening the door to future decisions on the part of the FAA to ask the city to condemn that property and vacate it because it's in the RPZ. So that is the reason we want to go, and I'm asking that we get approval from the council to have a delegation go to Orlando and to meet with FAA, to share the work that's been done by our citizens with them, to ask for their ideas. Now, let's assume that the FAA gives us some ideas as to how we might meet this problem. And that's, of course, what we're hoping for. In order to complete the process, we would have to come back and we would have to get a certified airport planning group to pick up that process, to put it in a form that would be approvable by the FAA. Now, that based on previous advice, not advice, but instruction really from council, the city manager and the airport manager have developed a request for proposals or a close request for qualifications, and they are prepared to go forward with it. And they feel, in fact, that the request to do that was made several months ago, and I have come before you today to ask that you allow the city manager to keep that project on hold until after we get this feedback from the FAA. It doesn't make, to me, good timing for us to start a contractor off on a process when we haven't got any idea what the guidance would be from the FAA. We could conceivably wind up drawing a plan that wouldn't be in their interest or in the city's interest. So basically, part one of the request is to authorize the city manager, the city airport manager, and myself, and Mr. Marble who did a lot of the work in developing the plan that is essentially a plan that has a common interest in Gulf Shores, to go and make that presentation and get the feedback from the FAA. And part two is that we would ask the city manager to keep on hold his request to get a consultant group into it until we're able to come back and tell council and tell the public what the FAA suggests to us as the way to proceed, and then we could move forward with the proper contracting authority.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I can't support that. You went to Washington, and you can correct me anywhere that I'm wrong, but you laid out in Washington, primarily used the majority of the time, is the way I understand it, and laid out the particular plan that you're now hoping to take to Orlando, because Washington basically said no, because there's other aspects that you're kind of leaving out of your presentation, like downsizing the size of the airport as one of that. Those plans also affect quite possibly what the FAA will fund for repaving of the runway that we still need to do, and also the width that they're willing to pay for, and our airport budget will not pay for that. And I can't see authorizing you to go up to a different office hoping to get a different result and putting more of a workload on the city manager that we're already overloading staff as it is. And to put the rest of it on hold, basically, and I don't mean this, no pun intended, it basically puts us in a holding pattern, just delaying and delaying and delaying, which is, I think, a battle plan that a segment of the community wants. But there's no way that I'm going to support that, because you've already gotten an answer out of Washington, and I don't think we need to be going up and wasting more time with the officials up in Orlando when they're going to basically tell you the same things, or we're really going to financially affect our ability to do the runways that would come out of the proposal that you're bringing. So I will not be supporting this.
Mayor,
Yes.
I think there's a couple of elements here that you've got. One's putting the search or decision for a consultant on hold. The other is the airport plan itself, and the other is permission to go. Or I don't know that you need permission to go, but yes, you probably do need permission to present a certain kind of plan. Looking at the plan first, I've got a copy of it here. Mm-hmm. Let me ask a question first. There's two plans here that I did not see before you went to Washington. I understand they were on the table, but I didn't see them. There was a second plan there, the 1975 plan, which did not put the zones over the area that you're concerned about. Did you present that or ask any questions about that?
Yes. In fact, we showed the 1975 plan, which the FAA had approved. By the way, Rick, the situation is not as grim as you mentioned, and I'll be pleased to try and clarify it for the record, because I realize that although I made a report to the council on what went on, your point would be very valid if that was the case. And we also showed the 86 plan, and in fact the 2000 plan, all of which do not include an RPZ that goes out over the area. But we basically went up there, and first of all, do you want to follow with another question, or would you like me to try and talk to both your answer and Rick's at the same time?
I have
Please,
more.
go ahead, certainly.